When we look at sources of government revenue, taxation is the main source of revenue for a government, and taxation could be both direct taxes and indirect taxes. Direct taxes is basically one which is levied on the incomes of individuals and firms, and may include taxes on inheritance, taxes on income or corporations tax, and so on. On the other hand, when we look at indirect taxes is the one which is levied on goods and services or expenditure on goods and services. They are therefore like, for example, sales tax, or for example value added tax, which is sort of levied on people's expenditure whenever they buy goods and services. Another important distinction to understand is when we look at indirect taxes can be also what we call flat or specific tax, which is a tax that is of an amount which doesn't vary with the quantity, or it could be an ad valorem tax, which is placed as a percentage tax on a good or service. For example, VAT or VAT might be set at, for example, 20%. So ad valorem tax is simply a percentage tax, while a flat tax could be an amount, let's say $5. So a flat tax, because it's an amount tax, it results in our supply curve to shift backward by the same amount. We learned this when we were doing taxes, that when you look at your impact of a tax, it results in supply curve to shift backward. So let's say if this is my supply curve before, and if I am putting a tax of $5, supply curve will shift backward from S0 to S1, where the distance between the two supply curves will be the amount of the tax, which is going to be $5. So this distance here, which we look at from this distance A to B, this is the amount of the tax. If the price, for example, was $7 with a tax of, for example, $5, which is this distance AB of $5, my new price P1, let's call it P0, will become 7 plus 5 or $12. So this vertical distance between the two supply curves will be basically the same distance, and that's why supply curve will shift backward in a parallel manner. On the other hand, when we look at ad valorem tax and we're looking at the shift of the supply curve, we will see the shift to be non-parallel, because now it's a percentage tax. So for example, when the price was $10 and you're putting 20% tax, so something which is for $10 will now become expensive by like 20% more, which means by $2 more, or new price will be, for example, $12. But if the price was $20, the impact of the tax will be more. So this distance here will be more, because 20 will become now 24, which means the tax amount will be $4 when the price was 20, and it will make it 24. The idea goes this, that the higher the value, the higher will be the tax, and that's why there's a non-parallel shift that will take place. So when we look at taxes, indirect taxes can be flat or ad valorem. But let's go back to our direct taxes, because when we look at direct taxes, there is another category that we need to look at. Direct taxes can be basically progressive, it can also be proportional, or it can be what we say regressive in nature. In the case of a progressive tax, what happens is this, that as people incomes rises, a higher proportion of the increase is taken in tax. In this case, the marginal rate of tax increases. The marginal means extra rate of tax will go up. In other words, as the income go up, the tax rate also go up. In many countries, the proportion of income taken in tax rises when the income goes above certain levels or thresholds. For example, income tax might start at 20% and then increases at 30%, and then 40% and 50%, and keeps on going up as income level rises. So when the income rises and the tax rate also rises, we call this as a progressive tax. On the other hand, when we look at regressive taxes are kind of opposite of progressive taxes, where as people's income rises, a lower proportion of the increase is taken in tax. So in this case, the marginal rate of tax, the extra tax rate, as your income go up, will fall. A good example of a regressive tax is the tax which is on indirect goods. If you look at, let's say, an indirect tax of $5 which people pay, it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, no matter whether your income go up or down, you pay the same amount of tax, which would mean that even though your income may go up and your tax amount doesn't increase, this means, or tax rate doesn't increase, this means the tax is regressive in nature. Finally, when we look at proportional taxes, so proportional taxes takes the same proportion of personal income, whatever the level. These taxes have what we call a constant marginal rate of taxes. In other words, the tax rate does not change when income changes. So when you look at progressive taxes have an increasing marginal rate of tax, while regressive tax have a decreasing marginal rate of tax. And when we look at proportional taxes, they have a constant marginal rate of tax. There are four main reasons why government may want to put taxes. The first reason is simply because the government wants to raise revenue to help finance its own expenditure. We saw earlier the government can run into budget deficit, and tax revenue plays an important role in making sure they do not have these deficits, which can lead to national debt. When it comes to policy making, the government can manage aggregate demand through taxes. We can see that if there is inflation happening in a society or economy, taxation can result in making the aggregate demand to fall, because higher taxes can lead to lower disposable income, which in turn can cause aggregate demand to fall. Similarly, taxes could be good when it comes to distribution of income and wealth. Taxes are basically designed in many countries to make sure that they result in what we call equal distribution of wealth. By progressive taxes, the government can achieve the goals of equality in a society through taxes. Lastly, the government can also manage market failure or environmental targets through taxes. By taxing the firm that is polluting, the government can make sure that the market failure can be reduced. Let's now look at government expenditure or government spending. When we look at government spending, there are two types of government spending. One is what we call capital expenditure, and another one is what we call current expenditure. Capital expenditure, or what we call gross fixed capital formation, are the terms used for government investment. This is the spending by the government on goods and services intended to create future benefits, such as, what we call infrastructure investment in transport, such as road building, health and education, such as, new hospitals or schools, or any, sewage systems, or even research spending like on defense or, vaccinations or space sort of programs by the government. Now, when we look at this kind of expenditure, we say this kind of expenditure is very important because it can result in our productive potential to go up. We can call this policy to result in higher standard of living for the future, as PPC can shift to the right because government is investing on infrastructure, on health and education, and research spending. On the other hand, when we look at current expenditure, this is the expenditure which is government consumption expenditure on goods and services for current use to directly satisfy the individual or collective needs of the members of the community. For example, the wages of the public sector employees or road maintenance and all that will be current expenditure. In other words, this is expenditure that does not result in investment for the future, but it is used for the current use or current consumption. Now let's look into what we call reasons for government spending. Government spend money for many different reasons, including to supply goods and services that the private sector would fail to do, such as public goods like defense, or merit goods such as hospitals and schools, and even welfare payments and benefits such as unemployment benefits and disability benefits that only the government can pay. Another important aspect of government spending is to achieve what we call supply side improvements in the macroeconomy, such as spending on education, training, and other aspects that can improve labor productivity. Thirdly, the government spending can also be to reduce what we call negative externalities such as pollution and even like any other negative aspects of consumption. Another key government expenditure is to help redistribute what we call income and achieve more equity in a society. This is done to the welfare payments that the government make from time to time in terms of unemployment benefits or other welfare payments. Government may also spend money in terms of subsidizing industries which may need financial support. Like for example, agricultural sector in many countries is subsidized because poor farmers may not get good prices, and therefore subsidies can help in protecting their income. And lastly, we can say that government expenditure could also be used in terms of managing aggregate demand. So, for example, if economy is slowing down and economic activity is declining, the government expenditure in terms of creating more jobs can result in the AD curve to shift to the right, and in turn can result in economic activity to go up and an economy to come out of recession even. So we can understand that government expenditure is crucial when it comes to an economy's well-being, and therefore this government expenditure is financed through taxation, which is also crucial in terms of supporting the economy and making sure the functions of the economy operate properly.
Hey there, if you like what you saw right now, head over to altacademy.org for access to content around 6 subjects with past papers, videos, revision guides, flashcards, and academic support. All of this is going to make sure that you're completely set for your A levels. So I'll see you there on the platform.